Does Satan even exist? Because the version of Satan that most people imagine isn't where the story starts. Hey everyone, my name's Adam Smith. I am an ordained minister of Word and Sacrament, and I care deeply about exploring difficult questions and common misconceptions about faith and the Bible. And as a pastor, I get questions like this all the time. Is there really some kind of external evil force out there, or is Satan just a way of talking about human sinfulness? And if God is all powerful, why would God allow something like Satan to exist at all? And my friends, these aren't shallow questions. They're deeply theological questions tied to one of the biggest issues in all of religion. And that's the problem of evil. We call this theodicy. Now, scholars like Archie T. Wright and Elaine Pagels and Madison Estrada all point out that the development of Satan really is closely tied to this question of theodicy. So what I want to do in this video is step back from our assumptions, and we're going to trace how the concept of Satan actually develops from ancient Judaism to the time of Jesus, to the early church, and beyond that as well. Now, to understand Satan, we have to start with a world without Satan. In many ancient religions, Greek, Roman, Mesopotamian, good and evil both come from the gods. The gods were unpredictable. They blessed and cursed and punished and rewarded, and humans were often caught in the middle or treated as playthings. And early Israelite theology isn't that different. In the Hebrew Bible, God is the primary agent behind everything, good and what we might call evil as well. Think of it like this. Think of stories like the flood story, or Joseph being sold into slavery, or national conquest, even Job's suffering. In all of these, God is ultimately responsible, or at least permitting and directing events. There is no independent evil force competing with God. So here's where things get interesting, though. The word Satan in Hebrew, ha-satan, is not a proper name. It means the adversary or the accuser. And it shows up only a handful of times in the Hebrew Bible. Sometimes it refers to human opponents. Other times it refers to a divine figure working on behalf of God, but never the devil. And we see examples of this in Numbers 22. An angel of the Lord blocks Balaam and is described as the Satan, meaning an adversary doing God's will. In Job 1 and 2, the Satan is part of God's divine counsel, a kind of prosecuting attorney, and it's testing human righteousness with God's permission. And in Zechariah 3, the Satan accuses the high priest in a heavenly courtroom kind of scene. And again, it's about a function, not about rebellion. And in every case, the Satan is not opposing God. He's operating within God's system. Now, that's a very different picture than what most people imagine today when we think of that word Satan. Now, just a side note here before we move on, because this always comes up when I'm meeting with people and talking with people about Satan. The name Lucifer appears only once in the Bible in Isaiah 14:12, and it does not point to Satan. It's a taunt against the king of Babylon, comparing him to the morning star, which in Hebrew is Hallel. The association of Lucifer with the devil, well, that's a later Christian interpretation and not something found in the original text. Now, where everything begins to shift is in the Second Temple period, roughly 500 BCE to the 1st century CE. And why? Why do things begin to shift? Well, because the question of evil becomes much more pressing. Israel's gone through a lot, experiencing exile, foreign domination, and suffering. And it's taken this toll on the people. And people began asking the question, if God is good, why is this happening? And one emerging answer is that maybe evil isn't coming directly from God. Maybe there's an opposing force. And this is where texts like 1st Enoch come in. Now we can begin to see something new. We see fallen angels. We see cosmic rebellion. We see leaders of evil. And Satan begins to shift from a role to a specific character. And at the same time, beliefs about the afterlife begin to evolve. From Sheol, that's that belief of that neutral place where all the dead go, we get to see this shift from that to now resurrection and judgment and cosmic justice. And once you have a final cosmic battle, well, you need a final cosmic enemy too. Now, it's important to know, though, that this shift is not wholesale. Several prominent beliefs of the afterlife, including the traditional belief concept of Sheol, are widely accepted, even during the time of Jesus. So there is no singular view about the figure Satan or hell or resurrection or concept of the afterlife in that first century. By the time we reach the New Testament, there is a concept of Satan that has taken shape. It's been developed as this personal antagonist. And we see this take shape in the Gospels and in the New Testament, where now Satan is the tempter of Jesus. He's the ruler of demons. He's the prince of the world. And the Gospels portray him as real and active. And there's some nuance here, though, too, because sometimes Satan still functions as a role rather than a figure. Jesus tells Peter at one point, you guys know this and remember this passage, "Get behind me, Satan." Not because Peter is Satan, but because he's acting as an adversary. Paul uses similar language. He describes Satan as the force that hinders and tempts and disrupts. So we have both ideas now coexisting in the New Testament, a cosmic opponent now and a functional adversary. And we can see this concept is still evolving over time. Now, in Revelation, everything goes full apocalyptic. Satan becomes the dragon, the deceiver of the world, and there's a final battle, good versus evil, and Satan is ultimately defeated. And notably, there's a serpent, a giant serpent, the devil, Satan. Everything gets merged into one figure. And this is where the unified villain image really seems to solidify, the one that you and I know so well. What we don't see in the Bible, that people often assume, is that Satan is the ruler of hell, torturing people. That image was shaped by post-apocalyptic literature and tradition and art. Think Dante and Milton, not Genesis and Matthew. Now, today, Christians are still split. Some believe Satan is a literal spiritual being. Others see Satan as symbolic, a way to describe human evil. And some, well, they're not sure what to believe. There was a Barna study in about 2008, I believe, that interviewed over 1,800 professing Christians about their belief in spiritual beings, and what they found was that 40% strongly agreed that Satan was symbolic. 19% somewhat agreed with this, and only a minority strongly affirmed in a literal being Satan. Even within the church, there just is no consensus on this. So back to the original question, does Satan exist? Historically, the concept evolves. Biblically, the portrayal shifts. Theologically, well, interpretations even today still vary. So for some, Satan explains evil to remove any and all blame from a good God. For others, the concept of Satan simply tries to shift responsibility away from our human choices. And for many, the question is still open. Maybe the better question isn't, does Satan exist, but how do we respond in the wake of evil in the world? When faced with news or scary tragedies, Fred Rogers, who you guys know as Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, who also happened to be an ordained minister, he often shared advice from his mother. He said, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." Even if we don't know the nature of evil, we have a choice in how we respond to it. We can be light in the midst of darkness. We can be helpers in the wake of brokenness and tragedy. We can seek justice in the midst of injustice. Understanding why evil exists is an age-old question that we wrestle with over and over and over again, even today, because answers just don't seem to satisfy. But what we do in the midst of the evil around us, well, that's something that we can focus on, whether we're religious or not. My friends, if this content helped you, think a little bit deeper, I encourage you to subscribe, like this video, and come back to hear more about intersections of history and theology in real life. And I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? Is Satan real, symbolic, something else entirely? And does it matter? What other topics or questions would you like to explore? All in the comment section below, my friends. Till next time.